I've been doing this for 32 years for AXEL Plastics. I'm the regional guy who covers the East Coast and a couple other countries here and there. I've been to a lot of different parts of the country. I've covered a lot of different areas. I know mold release the last 32 years, so I pretty much know what's going on. Tom is the technical manager, and Tom is going to be doing the demo. He's a really good hands-on guy. Remote release is really good to have hands-on guy because like streaking's not easy to do, so cleanliness is really important. So the first thing that Tom's going to do, whenever you want to coating the stick, you have to clean the surface. If you don't clean the surface, you're going to get streaks, nothing's going to bond. It's just like painting. So Tom is basically going to apply this as if you, or clean this as if you were going to paint. So the first thing Tom's going to do, this was compounded, and you can see some of the compounding marks. And we're not going to do all the demo right here. We're going to take you through the steps right across the mold. Because if we had to do each section, you have to wait for everything to dry and cure. Things don't cure instantaneously, so we set up the other steps so you're ready to go. One of the things that you'll see here, which is a demo I've never seen anyone else do, is you will see a primer. I've seen primers used before, but what a primer does is it really, I'm going to use the word, it'll confuse you, sealer. It really seals the mold really well. When you put the primer on, the only thing that's going to take the primer off is sanding. You could probably do it with some really heavy compounding, but the only thing, and strippers, cleaners, it's not going to take it off. So you have to put it on correctly, otherwise you're going to have to sand it off. So we have developed a primer that goes on really easy, and the benefit of a primer is that you'll get more longevity out of your mold. So that means before you have to touch it up, you won't have to put it on as often. You will not get as much styrene buildup because styrene can't get to the mold anymore because it has to go through some massive abrasion for it to break through that primer. And the haze that gets transferred to the part is going to be less because it's going to stop the styrene from grabbing onto anything. The porosity, which is in the mold, will be reduced because the primer will be on the surface and it will fill the voids. Because when you compound, you don't get rid of all the porosity, you only knock the top off and you create other holes that you go down lower in the tooling. So, you clean the tool. Tom's going to do this 2 ways. He's going to wash it with, because compounds, we never know what you guys use for compounds. I don't even know what they use here for compounds. Tom used a compound, he likes it, but we know that when we come in, we have to take off water-soluble compounds and solvent-soluble compounds. So we'll clean it with a water-based cleaner, and we'll clean it with a solvent-based cleaner, and that's the way you clean whatever mold you have. You could take a shortcut, and people generally just use just the solvent cleaner, but if you use both, you know you can.
We have some pretty warm water here. It's going to help break down the animal fat and whatnot in the fluffing compound.
And there's a section in the middle of his mold that Tom wants to demonstrate. This section right here has semi-permanent release on it. Tom will just show you how things clean a semi-permanent release. You can still kind of see that box with the water beating up around the box. I mean the box of where the semi-permanent was, our 820. The only thing water-based here is the cleaner. We have water-based releases, but water-based releases don't last, in our experience, as long as semi-permanent releases. If water-bases did last longer, or if water-based paints lasted longer, the car would probably be painted with a water-based paint. But the car industry hasn't done it, and we're not ready for water-bases to last as long. So all our business that we do with semi-permanent is solvent-based.
So usually the easiest way to strip mold with compound on a wheel, faster than doing it by hand. So everywhere but the square, if you want to see the difference, the square is going to bead up Water's going to suck up into it. If we hit this with our solvent mold cleaner, it's not going to affect that mold. We have to use a stripper. So instead of getting the compound back out, we're going to use it's our AquaClean 521. So it's got some very light abrasive in it, not enough to scratch your gel coat, but just enough to take off the mold.
As you heard in the presentation yesterday on mold releases, the only thing that takes a semi-firm off is abrasion. And that's why semi-firms don't last forever. Semi-firms will come off based on the shape. It's the scratching. As you pull them off, it's the scratching that wears the semi-firm away. So generally it's on an edge, a corner, or radii. That's where the abrasion is going to be. If you run a marble shop and you're running a lot of white, TiO2 is really abrasive. The white parts will abrade the mold release more so than a darker color. It's just something odd. Same thing with the spray tips of the gel gun. They will also get worn out faster when you spray white. Something we notice, doesn't matter too much to us. We like white because you use a little bit extra release in the corners. So what we set up here, Tom will basically, this is showing you how to clean this mold, and he'll show you how to see that it's clean with the tape. I know you got it here.
Might be hard for you guys to see, but no more square left.
Oh, what tape do you use? You generally use whatever they have in the shop because that's what they're going to use when you're gone. But this tape is pretty aggressive, so you can really feel it. Like, this is what we use in our lab. It doesn't matter what it is anyway. But when you use the same tape all the time, you get the same result. So whatever they got back there is what they'll tape test their mold with. If you carry around this tape and say this is the best tape in the world and you keep it around your car, it's not going to be the same in a couple of weeks. So I don't carry a roll of tape. Tom is at a lab, so their lab is actually air conditioned. You know? So you just did water so far?
Water only.
So this is only water only, and you'll see how that's just with water, and then it'll get a little bit more aggressive with the cleaner. When you do a cleaner, if you just use one rag, all you're doing is moving it around. You have to use two. Good tip if you have to do your windows at home, use two. You use one to dissolve, the other one to pick up the dirt. If you use one, you just move it around. Makes a lot of sense, but a lot of people don't do it.
And you want to get to this before it starts flashing off with your second rag?
Yeah. If you wipe it off after it dries, it kind of defeats the purpose. It'll still come off a little easier, but you got to wipe it off before it dries. The cleaners are formulated not to dry too fast, so you have some working time. Ours gives you a little bit more working time. That way you got more time for it to dissolve what's there and pick it up. And so Tom has just basically showed you how to clean them all. Didn't matter what was on it. They compounded it, they water cleaned it, water washed it, and now we just did CX500. You can actually see some of the tape bonding there. It stuck. Not a good thing, but not a good thing for the tape, but it shows it's really clean. So the next steps Tom's going to do is he's going to put primer, but we're going to move over to the other mold. Or you want to bring it over? Good. So this is the new thing. I've been doing it 32 years. Primer will make a big difference, especially if you're getting mold scumming or mold buildup, or you got a mold that's just not performing. This will make a difference. You can only put this on a clean mold or recoat itself. Once you put something else on top of this, no more.
It's a moisture sensitive product. We like to work how it's squirt out the top lid. So that we always have to throw the lid back on.
Yeah, so if you try to put this onto the sealer, which comes on after it, it's not going to bond. So this is the only time you get it. It's very hard to explain the difference between a primer and a sealer, but a primer is the first product that goes on, and it really does seal the porosity on the tool. Primers didn't really exist. You don't see this out there, but it's making such a difference on new molds that the value is definitely worth it, especially on a new mold. Without question.
You want your applicator wet out but not dripping. Use a small one. This won't take much.
It's going to add gloss to it, and this is kind of like a really, this is, in your world, you probably don't leave your molds outside, but in the marine world, they're so big that they have to. They have no room for it. So they start with a mold that got dirty laying around, and that's actually not even too dirty. And then Tom pressure washed this section, and then he cleaned this up, and he put, I don't know how many coats of primer it is, but he put, how many coats of primer? Three coats of primer on it, and it's not perfect, but for a mold that was left outside for a couple of years, I mean, they're going to pull a part on it. They're probably only going to pull one, and they'll just buff the part out. But for you guys who are going to pull out multiple parts, you're going to do what Tom does, and it's going to take out all the minor porosity that's in the mold, which then will be what you get in your final part. And instead of buffing that porosity out over there or filling it with a filling glaze or something, you're getting rid of it before it goes out. This primer will do a great job on MDF, on plywood, whatever you're trying to do. This happens to be tooling board, and they're all the same, they're just different. They all have primer on them. That has one coat, 6, 7, 5. And you can see the difference of the gloss as it fills the porosity from what the bottom. I mean, you can see that. You're welcome to pick these up whenever anybody wants. I'll just leave them laying here.
So using it as a wipe off primer, we'll just do 2 coats just like that. Wipe it on. We try to stay in squares, about meter size. We recommend microfiber cloth that is has some nylon in it. Much your standard microfiber doesn't really like to soak stuff up. These really do much better. A lot of car detail guys like these. If you buy them in bulk, we got them under 50 cents a pound. And they really save you time when you're wiping off your boat.
Now we're going to move on. So there's the primed mold. This one's already been primed, and there's a note on it that says needs 2 coats of UMF, the sealer. Now, up until a couple months ago, this was the latest invention. This is the sealer, and sealers have been known to streak really bad. Now, you can't blame a dirty mold on a sealer, but you can blame streaking on some sealers in the past. Our old mold releases, our old sealers used to streak, and the newer ones are much, much easier to use. And if you use them correctly and the mold's clean, you don't streak at all. As you heard yesterday in the demo, this sealer is a very strong mold release. It's so strong that when you wipe it on, you'll see it. And therefore, since you see it, you gotta wipe it off. The next step, when you see the release, it's a good release, but the solids are very low on it. You could just wipe it on and walk away. They've come a long, long way, these sealers and the releases. We keep improving them, and the problem is with stocking distributors, they like the old stuff and they don't always switch. But these products are the standard products that you'll find at our distributors. Now we distribute to the people who are standing here.
Again, just like a primer, you want your applicator fully wetted out, but not dripping. We're gonna work probably do about half this mold in one shot. We're gonna draw a box, some box overlap at about 50% each pass.
When you're doing this, you generally don't want the fan right on top of you because then it dries it too fast. So if there's a fan there, turn it in the other direction or turn it off. You don't want to wipe it off right away because it is getting into the mold a little bit, into the primer. So let it sit there. Usually anywhere between 30 seconds and maybe a minute. You start to see the stuff almost start drying. And then Tom will do what he does there.
We'll see like almost a rainbowy sheen. It's kind of hard on the orange balls here. Wait till it starts to dry just a little bit.
Yeah. So if you wipe it off too early, you don't get as much sealer on it. If you wipe it off too late, you might get a little bit of streaking. Is there an exact time? No, it's all time, temperature, humidity. You'll see that our containers they all have like our sample containers have little. In this case, it has the little poke hole in it. These will have just a little pinhole in it. But these are sample containers, which I have samples here. If someone came by car and they want one, regularly we put them in bottles like that. You want to just put that bottle up right there? Yep. See, it has a flip top on it. I like these because they always stay on top of it, and you don't lose caps or they're yeah. So I mean, you have a cap on that, it's going to go somewhere, and you're not finding it. And then the bottle stays open. One of the worst things is working out of a gallon. If you worked in a air-conditioned, dry environment, hey, you can work out of a gallon. Our guys in the lab can do it because there's no humidity in it. But when a plant like this leaves a gallon open, it starts to go bad. And the catalyst for mold release is the air. Cleaner, you can leave it open all day long, but it'll just evaporate. But the sealer, the primer, the release, they're all going to turn to jello. And you can shake them up all day long, but that's actually going to make it worse because now you're putting the air into the release primer, whatever, and you're distributing the catalyst, the air, into the product, making it worse.
Two primers, two UMFs, and our final coat we're going to do, this has already been treated with 2 coats of UMFs. We're going to do 2 coats of our pilot release on here, which is our 820.
If you happen to see a streak, sometimes you can't tell if it's a streak or not, you can still wipe that out. I kind of see one here. But that might be in the mold. I think that's in the mold. That's in the mold. But if you had something that you laid it on really heavy, and you could actually come back, if it didn't wipe right off, you could wipe another coat of sealer on it and wipe it off. When someone's going like this, really hard to wipe that streak out, this is abrasion. You're taking off the mold release. If you do that and it's a streak because it's mold release, you have to put something else on. But if you got it right, the mold's good, you don't have to worry. So now, the last step, you'll see here there are, we call these wall charts. And each wall chart, you can hang them out. Each wall chart shows you how to do it. When I ordered these, I forgot to order the one for the release. The one for the release is the easiest one there is because you just wipe it on. You don't have to wipe it off, just wipe it on. And if it's streaking, it's not because of the release. If it's streaking, it's because of a dirty rag or a dirty environment. Okay. And if it, these shops you can't keep perfectly clean, but you can start with a clean rag. We use paper towels to apply these because the paper towel is the same all the time. And it distributes it really good. There's no secret in these. These are Scott white balls. There's different ones, but we like the blue one because it shows when it's wet. If you're doing a big surface, we like, you need one? Okay. He's got it all wet. If you're doing a big surface, You could wrap these twice and just fold them up. And but the one thing is that you see Tom's rag, you know, or paper towel, it's all wet. If you take a big one and you've got little spots in it, and then you go drag it across the wall, it's only going to hit whatever's wet. So if you squeeze it up, it gets distributed into the rag and puts on a nice thin coating. You don't want to put these on heavy. When you put these mold releases on heavy, they don't cure because they need the moisture in it. A good example of how these things work in the real world, silicone caulking, as you've seen around some of them, when you put a coat of silicone caulking there, if you let it sit for 15 minutes, it cures, but it only cures on the outside. So we need this to cure thoroughly so you keep it thin. That bead that you laid down in that silicone rubber, you cut it, it won't be cured in the middle. So you want to put this on thin. And that's coming from the guys who sell this. I mean, we would love you to dump a bucket of mold release on here. We'd sell more, but it's not going to help anyone.
Also very common in the shops to see guys take their rag, their application rag, set it there, 10 minutes later, come back to it. You're starting to cure the product on the outside of the rag. It's going to streak. So any longer than a few minutes, get yourself a new applicator rag. Always put the lid on. We run into this all the time. Caps off the can. This is sitting here like this for 15, 20 minutes. So this is a wipe on, leave on. This is super easy. Do this whole mold in one shot. I'm just going to do this corner here. It's just sitting here. We have some dust, so I gave it a quick. Same thing, draw a square. Then we're going to fill it in, 50% overlap.
I tell you, most people are not this careful. Me included.
Want a nice thin, even coat.
That's it. I don't have the wall chart for it, but we have them. I just don't have it with us. This is 820 release. This is UMS sealer. Prior to that was the PR ACP primer, EZ. And prior to that was CX500 cleaner. Do people take shortcuts? Absolutely. You can determine to put less coats on or whatever you do, but we always say 2 coats everything, because when you're doing a difficult shaped part, you might miss an inside corner here, and that's where it's going to stick. You're welcome to
Come up, do tape tests, you can feel them.
Yes.
How long will it last before you have to reapply everything?
Everything?
Start from the beginning.
Ask Chris. Chris, how long does this stuff last?
No, I mean, we've hundreds of holes.
He just happened to be walking by. I mean, he was walking by, and that was the setup.
These guys, yeah, they don't have to put anything on it. No, if you put a yes, if you put a bar on it, there's like that gel coat line. You just take the 820, clean that line off. You tape test it to make sure that you're.
What takes it off is abrasion. I mean, these are very simple.
Yeah, when there's dust on it, I tell them to call it.
The abrasion will break that clear.
The bowls are going to require more, because they shrink on the bowl, and as you bring it up, if you don't pull it off perfectly straight, it scratches on it. So you take a little touch up and just wipe it on it. So in between each step, generally it's a half an hour between each. You don't have to worry about it after you clean it. You could put the primer right on. If you don't want primer, you can put the sealer right on top of it. But after each step of the primer, the moisture cured product, or the or the sealer or the release, you wait a half an hour between each. After the last coat of everything, we generally ask people to wait an hour. Can you let it sit for 2 days? Great. Can you expose it to heat? It really loves heat. These things, the better cured they are, the more bulletproof they are. If you can let them sit overnight, they do even better. Just like polyester resin, they steam to get harder and harder, and then they usually after a half an hour, you're not going to notice a big difference. If it's cold, you will. One of the biggest tips I can give you guys as you're coming out into the bad season of molding is, why do people have sticking? In the morning, these guys come in and they run their mold through the oven to preheat them. If you don't do that, the mold's cold, you basically take a cold mold and you spray gel coat on it, and then on the heated one, if it was a heated mold, you spray gel coat on it. Now you're waiting for this gel coat to cure. Which one's going to cure faster? Heated one. Which direction is it going to cure from? 70 degrees here, this might be 80 degrees. It's going to cure here, and it's going to cure on the bottom, and all the volatiles are going to go up in the air. The problem with cold weather and cold mold is that this is curing from the top, because it's 70 here, and it might be 50 degrees here. It's definitely a lot of shops where they pull the molds off the floor and it's 50 degrees. So it skins off here, you can touch it, but it's still cold underneath, and all the volatiles are trapped from going into the air, where I'm not sure who wants them. OSHA probably doesn't like that, but you want to stop, you want to stop the volatiles from attacking the mold, because it's styrene. And so the longer the gel time, the longer the wet resin, uncured resin sits on the mold, the more it has a chance of attacking the mold. So when winter comes along, you want to try to keep your mold somewhat warm, or at least at ambient temperature. And that makes the biggest difference, because when you start in the morning, everyone will tell you that it's hard to pull the mold in the morning. And that's the only difference, is the temperature of the mold.